The following is a demonstration on how to create your very first HyperIntelligence card. To begin creating your card, click the plus icon on the Cards tab in Workstation. In this window, you can see all the datasets that you can use to build your card. Let's select the Workday employee dataset to begin. Now that we've selected our dataset, we're taken to the card creation interface. When beginning to build your card, you have the option to choose from several pre-selected card templates. Let's click on the Change Template button on the right and select the section template to get started. On top of the card, you can see the drag and drop an attribute header. The attribute that you place in this header is the one whose keywords will be used to trigger the card to appear in your various applications. Let's add employee to the header by dragging and dropping it from the dataset. Now that we have our main attribute, let's take a look at the options we have in the header. In this template, there's a picture icon in the top left, and as it happens, one of the attribute forms of employee is a picture. To display the picture on the card, we can click on the picture and choose Photo to display. We can also determine what form of this attribute displays in the title, what displays in the subtitle, or if we even want a subtitle at all. To make these changes, let's go to the three ellipses that appear when we click on the header. You can see that we have the option to set either of the two additional attribute forms as the subtitle. And as the box is checked and unchecked, the subtitle appears and disappears. We also have the option to set one of the other attribute forms as the title. Say that instead of employee name, we wanted employee ID to be the title of the card. We can hover over the employee ID attribute form and click Set as Title to make the attribute form appear as the title instead. Additionally, you have the ability to use those same attribute forms we showed as keywords to trigger the hypercard to appear as well. If we click on the header and select the middle icon, we can select to match on any of the identified attribute forms. Let's select the employee ID attribute form and click Apply to confirm the changes. What this means is that now anytime employee ID appears in any of your hyper-enabled applications, it will trigger the hypercard in addition to employee name. In the header, we also have the ability to add links, and we can do that by clicking the plus button. Once we click the plus button, you can see that we open up the link configuration interface. We have the option to choose text to use to display the hyperlink. We also have a library of icons that we can use to give additional context to the link. When we open that up, we can see there are many icons that we could choose from, but let's click the Workday icon because we're going to link this card to Workday. Now moving down below, you can see that we can either choose to make our link static or contextual given our data. For this example, let's make a static link to workday.com. And now we'll go back up to the text and write in the text we want to use to display the link. And now when we click Apply, our hyperlink will be activated and displayed in the header of our card. Now that we've covered the header, let's move down to the body of the card. Each card template starts with a series of pre-configured widgets in the body of the card, and we can see these in the body here. Widgets are how you display data on your card, and as I mentioned, each template starts with widgets added by default. But you can freely add or remove widgets at will. If you want to add a widget, you can go to the bar on the right where you can see the 4 widgets listed. The first widget in our card is the list widget. And the list widget displays a label and a value based on the data that you add to it. To add information to the body of the card, we have to drag and drop an attribute or metric into the widget. So let's go ahead and add hire date into the list widget. And as you can see, we now see hire date displayed with hire date as the label on the left and the actual information on the right. There are several formatting options we can use to configure this widget to display the data in the way we find most visually appealing and pertinent to our use case. In the list widget, we can format both the label and the value. So for this label, let's say we want to make the hire date bold to make it visually stand out more, but we're okay with the way that the value is displaying. Additionally, we don't need this extra row, so we can either click delete to remove it, or we can change the rows with the row selector in the list widget format panel. Now, let's move to the next widget we have in our card, the text box widget. The text box widget can either display text of your choice, or it can display an attribute, as we can see in the format panel on the right. For this text box, let's go ahead and introduce text. And this will be used as a label for what we're going to include in the next section below. Let's go ahead and type in ratings of interest, because in the matrix widget below, we're going to include the ratings of interest that we want to show. The matrix widget essentially allows you to display KPI-like visualizations in a grid-like format. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on how you can format the matrix shortly, but now let's go ahead and add some of our data to this matrix widget. And again, we do that by dragging and dropping the items from the dataset panel onto the widget. Now that we've added our data to the matrix widget, we can notice there's a bit of a discrepancy between the way the three numbers are displaying. The first two numbers go to 2 decimal places, while the last number doesn't have any decimal places. We want all 3 numbers to go to 2 decimal places, so to do that, let's go to number formatting. As we hover over the rightmost matrix square, let's go to the top 3 ellipses, and you can see that this is called number formatting. Let's click Quick Format, and you can see we have a series of options on how we want to format this number. In this use case, let's go to decimal, and go ahead and add 2 decimal places to this number. Next, we want to include the employee's salary information. So we'll move down to this next text box and type in salary to use as a section header for the salary information we want to include in the matrix widget below. So let's go ahead and drag the salary metric and place it in the widget below the text box. Now that we've done that, that's actually the only metric we want in this matrix widget. We don't want the 2 boxes to the right. So what we'll do is go into the format panel and readjust the size of the matrix so that all we're showing is that one single cell. And so now we have this salary KPI in the middle of our card. Now, as we move down to the next 2 widgets that we see on the card, let's decide that we don't want these on our card. We want to put something else there instead. So what we can do is just drag from that middle dot icon and just pull it off the screen, and it will delete the widget from the card. So we'll pull those off and delete them from our card. Now that we've removed those widgets, let's add the only other widget that we haven't introduced so far, the ring widget. And as we drag that over from the right-hand side, you can see that we can freely position it at any point in the card, in between, on top of, or below any of the existing widgets. So let's go ahead and put it below that first matrix. And what we want to add to the ring widget is percentage-based metrics, because the ring widget is used to display metrics as a percentage of a whole. So in this ring widget, I want to include a few more indicators of this employee's performance. So what I'll do is name this ring widget teamwork and timeliness to reflect the 2 metrics I'm going to bring over. So let's go ahead and drag over that teamwork metric, and whoops, you can see that I accidentally dragged over the wrong metric. So to get rid of that, I can just quickly click the clear cell button, and that works on any widget that we have. We get rid of that, and I drag over the correct teamwork percent metric. And now I'll do the same thing with timeliness, drag that over, and add that in. And if I click back on the widget and go over to the format panel on the right, we can see that there are several different ways I could format this, but we're happy with the way that this looks right now. So let's go ahead and move on to the next widget on the very bottom of the card. And what this is the footer. The footer is essentially a text box, and we can choose to enable or disable it with the check mark in the top right screen of the format panel. For our purposes, let's leave it as an attribute and go ahead and bring over the email attribute to display on the bottom of this card. And with that, we've created our very first card in MicroStrategy HyperIntelligence.